I wrote to Jose Mourinho, who was one of the top guys at the time, and asked him if I could come in and view his session. And, I was there for a couple of days, sat and had a bit of food with him and just discussed football. And it's bizarre at times. You're thinking, what am I doing here? But that's been brilliant. Been forever grateful for the opportunity. That's how football works. So you're finished one game at 10 to 5, you're in the car at 6 o'clock and you're on the phone to Mark saying, what have you seen for the next game? Because that's how it works. And it gives us at the association such a boost. It gives the country such a boost. Handing's absolutely rocking these days. He's struggling to get tickets. It's a full house. When you're the manager, my God, it changes so dramatically that the responsibility is solely on you. It sounds incredible sometimes when you're watching 180 minutes of football and then there's basically about 2 minutes of footage goes up, but that's a job, and it's such an important job as well.
Hello and welcome back to my channel, and as you can tell, it's time for another guest, and today's guest is Dougie Anderson. So Dougie is a coach, education and development manager for the Scottish FA. So the reason I want to get Dougie on is he's got a wealth of experience when it comes to coaching, and I know a lot of people ask me about having coaching qualifications as an analyst. So this conversation is a really interesting one. Dougie's got some great experience in scouting, coaching, assistant management roles, and also obviously he's heavily involved in the coach education currently with the Scottish FA. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation with Dougie. Hello, Dougie. Welcome to the channel. How are you doing today?
All good, Chris. Good to see you.
Yep, and you too. You too. Appreciate you taking the time out. So I did give a little introduction, Dougie, but for those who don't know who you are, if you just want to let them know who you are and what you're currently doing, what's your current role?
Yeah, name's Dougie Anderson. I work with the Scottish FA. I've been with the Scottish FA. I started way back, probably about 20 odd years ago, as a football development officer, covering a whole range of jobs in the Scottish borders, grassroots football, coach education. Left the association to kind of try to get into club senior football for a few years, and I've recently come back. I've been in this post that I'm currently in for 4 years, which I'm a coach education and development manager. So been a long time in and out of the association and enjoying the role that I'm in just now.
Perfect. So we'll get into a little bit more detail what you're currently doing in your role in it later on, Dougie. Because I just want to make it clear, the reason I obviously wanted to get you on, Dougie, was, as I mentioned to you before we started recording, a lot of the viewers on here are analysts, the people that are looking to break into working in sporting roles, whether that be an analyst or a scout or even a coach. I think you've got a bit of a background from it. So you've got a heavy coaching background, as you mentioned, and we'll touch upon your previous roles, but also that now crossover between analyst and coach becoming more of a combined role almost, where a coach is expected to have a basic understanding and do some analysis, as we'll touch upon later. And again, that goes for both the other way as well. So a lot of jobs that analysts may be seeing now, as part of the requirement, the clubs may be asking for them to be qualified to a certain level of, have a coaching qualification, and that adds to their coaching understanding. So what we'll do, Dougie, if it's all right, we'll just go back to the early days. So cast your mind back a few years. So in terms of getting into coaching, did you play at any level? Was coaching always for you?
No, I played not a great level, sort of, non-league football in Scotland. Never, as a youngster, I was okay. I think I had a decent knowledge of what I wanted to do, but not, just for various reasons, not good enough to ever be considered as a professional player. So I played a lot of amateur football, and that's probably what got me in my coaching journey. I used to just wonder at times why we were doing the things we were doing, which wasn't always the best practice and didn't always make sense to me. So that's when I got kind of curious about the coaching side, and I'd done my first qualification. I think it was way back in the 80s. I'd done my C licence. I had a choice to go on holiday with my pals at the time, or spend a bit of money going on the C licence, and it's probably the best decision I made. I went on it, felt that I'd done okay, and I got the bug for it. Much to my mates' astonishment at not going to overseas for 2 weeks of sunshine and fun, but no, it was a good decision. Because you sometimes wonder, how do you know you know? How do you know that you're okay at coaching? And when you're taking out your comfort zone and just working in your own area with your own players, and meeting people from all over Scotland, different parts of the UK, and then you get that feedback from your tutor and some of your peers that you were okay at it. So that was when I kind of started my journey, Chris, in the coaching side.
Yeah, perfect. And we touched upon it a little bit there just before that, Doug. You mentioned you've got some scouting experience as well. So I'm just because I've got your LinkedIn profile up as well while we're chatting, so I can just look back at some of these previous roles. So one thing right at the bottom in terms of this is going back to sort of 2007, 2008. You've got opposition scout down for you did a bit of work with Hibs for a season or so. So as I mentioned, that is I've had guests on here that are scouts. They're working recruitment, and a lot of the viewers will be interested in that type of thing. So I'm just curious to know from a pure opposition scout perspective, then, Dougie, if you're watching let's say your team's playing a certain opponent next week, and your job is to be the opposition scout, what types of things are important? What types of things are you looking at to produce that scouting report?
I think I don't think it needs to be too complex. I think you need to know what your manager wants. I've worked for 2 or 3 different managers. It was John Collins at the time at Hibs.
Yeah.
And you need to then know what he wants. And some people want more detail, some people want less. But basically, you kind of have to analyse the game as in that professional manner. There is a fan to admire things. So I think in simple terms, you're looking at their style of play of the opposition. Do they build out from the back? What do they do in possession of the football? Do they build out for the back? Is there any patterns that they do? Is there any things that you need to look at that you can, stop that source? For example, if a team builds out for the back, somebody's maybe very good on the ball, one of the central defenders, so you may advise the manager or point out that it may be better to stop that one and try and let the other central defender have it, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And I think the way I kind of went about it was looking at the thirds, splitting the pitch into thirds. What do they do in possession of the ball, building out for the back? Do they build out for the back? If they kick it long, what do they do? What do they do in the middle of the park? And then what do they do in that final third? Do they cross the ball early? Do they switch the play? That type of stuff. And then what do they do out of possession? Do they have a high press? Do they have a low block? Where do they go? But then I think what you're trying to do is, and again, this is where you need to know your manager in terms of what information you can inform him to maybe have a look at. Ultimately, they will make the decision, but you may think, I think you're trying to exploit their weaknesses and prevent their strengths, really, in terms of that team. And there's various different styles, and you put your points across, and then the manager decides what to take from that. So that is kind of how I went about it. I try to do it to the best of my ability. When I was at Hibs, they didn't use a platform. I had to make up my own templates on PowerPoint. I spent a lot of time to make it as good as it could be.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it, and I think it's a good way of starting to understand the game from a coach's perspective and from that first team manager's perspective in terms of how they prepare their team for playing against that particular opponent.
Yeah, yes, it's a very good point about the kind of adapt it to the manager. So I presume as well, like the reports might then change over time as you get feedback from the manager as well, and what he likes to see, what kind of style they're playing as well. So
100%. I think you have to have that relationship, and I've worked with 2 or 3. I've worked with Gary Naismith when I was assistant manager at East Fife and Queen of the South, where we had somebody else doing that job, and very quickly, Gary wanted different information than John did, and you have to respect that and understand that and get in a way of working, because ultimately, when we were working at Queen of the South, we had to trust their scout because it would save us a lot of work, especially if you've got 2 games a week.
Yeah.
And he was very good. He got into a method of working with our analyst as well in terms of how he would pick moments in the game. So the higher level you go up, normally you do get footage. So he had an app on his phone, the scout, who would, if something happened, he could press the app on his phone, and it would go back X amount of seconds. So we sometimes, rather than always having to plough through, the 3 previous games, the scout would give us, or give me as assistant manager, what he'd seen. I would then filter it for the manager, because the skill is taking all that information, and then the manager's got to put it into probably a 10-minute presentation, which is it sounds incredible sometimes when you're watching 180 minutes of football, and then there's basically about 2 minutes of footage goes up, but that's a job, and it's such an important job as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
I think the key for anybody that's doing that job is making sure you're working to what the manager wants. Sometimes he may want your opinion, sometimes he may not.
Yeah.
You know, he might just want the facts of what's happened there. But as you kind of gain that trust, then you know we would always speak to, it was a guy Mark that was our scout. We would phone him up on the way back. What have you seen? What are you thinking? You know, straight after the game. So we'd be finished. That's how football works. So you're finished one game at 10 to 5, you're in the car at 6 o'clock and you're on the phone to Mark saying, what have you seen for the next game? Because that's how it works.
Yeah.
It's a very quick turnaround. One game's gone and you're straight on to the next.
Yeah, definitely. And anyone working as an analyst will know that as well. Analyst and scout, it's very quick and it's one big blur during the season. So that's so just moving on from then scouting. So we've got down to, you've mentioned a couple of roles. So football development officer again when you were with the SFA back previously, and then you've done some more scouting roles, and then we're going to jump to your role as first team coach at Cowdenbeath, Dougie, if that's all right. So if you was that kind of your first main coaching role, would you say? Was that your first kind of break?
I was also, just before that, I was at my local club. It was Gallifrey Dean. They were non-league, like in Scotland. It's now Lowland League. It's like the 5th tier.
Yeah.
So I was involved as I'm a dual manager at that club, and I was a first team coach there. So I kind of learned a lot at that level.
Yeah.
But at the time when I was at the Scottish FA as a development officer, you couldn't be involved with a senior club. That was just that kind of rule, that conflict of interest. So I kind of got the bug to want to, see if I could get involved in senior football. So I knew the assistant manager Lee Mako, who had a good career with Newcastle, Blackburn, Hearts. I kind of knew him from living in the Scottish borders, and he'd also been on some of our coaching courses. So I'd actually done a bit of work on pre-season with the Scottish FA, sort of piloting different exercises, taking heart rates. So I kind of put myself onto him and said, look, I'll do this for free. I'll come in for 6 weeks, give you a hand. You can use whatever you want. I'll bring heart rate monitor. So I forced myself in there and then hoping, that they see enough to give you a chance, which they did. So kind of that 6 weeks turned into a kind of permanent part-time role with Cowdenbeath, which I enjoyed. So my main focus at the time was making sure the guys were fit and discussing with the manager the type of training we would do. First season was great. We won the league, and I stayed there for a further season where Cowdenbeath were in the Scottish Championship, which was unbelievable in terms of a part-time club at that time being in the second tier of Scottish football, and we just survived. But my kind of no frustrations. I really enjoyed it, and I was totally grateful for the role. But the manager liked to do a lot of the coaching. Colin Cameron was the manager at the time. Lee liked to do a bit of the coaching, so I was just doing bit parts, and I kind of felt I wanted to get more time on the grass, so I kind of moved into. I had the decision. Hibs 15s. The head of the academy at Hibs had been at me a few times to go in, and I felt that would give me an opportunity to maybe get more time on the grass. So I kind of moved to that youth side, which I found very quickly that although I enjoyed it, I really missed the adult side of trying to win games on a Saturday. So there's a completely different role when you're working as a youth developer to being in the cutting edge of the senior game where you've got to win games. And much as I enjoy youth development, I found it quite not challenging. I just thought it was completely different. You're there to develop players, not to win games. If you win games, it's a bonus. And but a good experience as well to get back on that pitch on a more permanent basis. So that's kind of where we were at that particular time.
Yeah, you said it's obviously right. It is a different role altogether, being a youth coach and a first team coach, obviously. And you mentioned there you did some fitness stuff like the GPS. You also did you do some like analysis? Were you doing bits of analysis there as well? You seem to have like gone in and just basically helped out in all these different areas. So you kind
of I think the more to anybody out there, the more strings to your bow, it definitely has helped me. I got into, as I said, probably through that opposition analysis at Hibs, I started to get reasonably good on the computer. with PowerPoint, with cutting clips. So I've done that at Cowdenbeath as well, because Colin, Cameron, and Lee weren't particularly, that wasn't their strength, so I would do quite a bit of the presentations, a lot of that stuff, a lot of the, analysis of the other teams as well, and help put together presentations. So I think that helped. I think, the more tools you've got to you, not just being that coach on the grass, anything else you can add, I think it helps to you maybe getting an opportunity in the game.
Yeah, definitely. It is about being sort of the modern coach, isn't it? And keeping up with the tools that's there for you to make you a better coach ultimately. So you mentioned then you took a little bit at Hibs with the youth team. You realised probably not what you wanted to do longer term, in terms of you probably presuming you're missing that first team environment, winning. So the next kind of role with the club here we've got is East Fife. So you started as first team coach at East Fife, and then you went on to become assistant manager there. So was that with someone that you'd worked with previously, or was it? How did that role come about?
A bit of a bizarre one, actually. It came right out the blue. So I've been at Hibs maybe 3 months, and a guy, Willie Aitchison, who I had on a coaching course when I was with the SFA first time round. And he was in at Hearts as a youth coach at the time. He was first team manager. So he had Robbie Nielsen, who Robbie, who'd been at MK Dons, Hearts, and Gary Naismith, who former Hearts Everton player. They were still playing, but they were assistant manager and first team coach. So he wanted a set of eyes to help him when the two of them were playing. So he asked me to come in, so I came in. And unfortunately for Willie, very shortly after that, Willie got the sack. Robbie moved on to Hearts to the under-20s before he became first team manager there. And Gary was appointed first team manager. So Gary brought in Paul Hegarty as his assistant. He asked me to stay as first team coach because he'd been involved in some of the training sessions I'd taken, and he enjoyed them. So fast forward 6 months, the club had a bit of financial difficulties. Gary had to lose one of the staff members, so he kept me as his assistant, which was it's a horrible moment for him. Paul Hegarty, I got friendly with Paul. He was his assistant. Massive name in the game. Played with Dundee United. Played against Barcelona. Won the league with Dundee United. Had been caretaker manager at Aberdeen. But I think again, because I could probably do that analysis work and all that kind of stuff as well as coach, probably helped. And then I worked, with Gary. We won promotion, won the league, and I think it was our 3rd season there. So I didn't know Gary at all. I hadn't met him, but we've formed a good working relationship. Probably how it worked compared to Cowdenbeath for me was, although at East Fife, Gary was the player manager. So Gary had to, play and manage, which is very, very difficult. So he kind of entrusted me at the side to, run the team for him, along with, at times he would get so involved in the game, he would say, you have to make the subs. Other times he was okay. So between us, we run it, we've done okay. And Gary also allowed me to do 90% of the training. He wanted to be the manager. His strength was managing people, and he wanted to be the boss and the manager. My strength, I think, was on the training pitch, and it worked brilliantly. So that was us at East Fife,
that
just by chance. It's amazing how things in football work out. But that's how we kind of started working together.
Yeah, definitely. No, that is a great point. And then it leads me on nicely, actually, in terms of the role of the assistant manager, Dougie. I mean, what would you say, having done that role, is the importance of an assistant manager in terms of being there for the manager? But also, do you feel like there's people that are better suited to be an assistant than a manager? You mentioned like the qualities maybe he had as manager. He wanted to be the boss. I know there's a couple of questions in there, but just in terms of that role of the assistant, really.
I think the assistant it's a completely different role. I managed East Fife for 2 games. When Gary and myself went to Queen of the South. So the difference between I'll start off there, the difference, because I found that I actually had that difference, and I'll answer the question. When you're the manager, my God, it changes so dramatically that the responsibility is solely on you. So I had a Scottish Cup tie, and I had a league game. and fortunately won them both. But the fact the Scottish Cup tie was, they needed the finances, so you felt the pressure.
Yeah,
So you're picking the team. I just felt everything's on your shoulders. You're dealing with the chairman. You're dealing with so much more. When you're the assistant, I think you need a few qualities that are different. I think you need to, support the manager in terms of however that works. And some managers like to be in the training ground, so you do a different role. My role was to design training, take training,
yeah,
in conjunction with Gary, who would maybe want a specific session. I want to do switch a play. Can you put something on? We'd discuss it, then I go and deliver it.
yeah,
I've done that even when Gary stopped playing at Queen of the South. I've done quite a lot of the training, which is what I like doing.
mm,
You need to be there for him through the highs and the lows because he's got that tough job. Everything's on his shoulders when things don't go so well.
mhm,
But I think you're also that link to the players as well.
yeah,
And that's where it differs. I think some guys like to be writing about it in the changing room. I kept a wee bit of a distance, but I still got close to them.
yeah,
Um, but that was just my choice, and I think that was my way about it, my personality, rather than, because I remember Gary saying to me when he was at Hearts with Jim Jeffries and Billy Brown, Billy was in the changing room, Billy was all over, but I'm no Billy Brown. So I
yeah,
had to say, I'm no him. I don't
mm,
want to try to be him, so I'll do it the kind of way I want. And you've got to build up the kind of trust and relationship. There's some things you tell the manager, some things you keep to yourself in
yeah,
terms of the players. So I think it's a role that, if depending on what your manager wants you to do, you're there to do quite a bit of the training. Although the manager would always do it on the Friday, which
mm,
is the case when he does the shape and the final preparation. That's
yeah,
the gaffer's job.
yeah,
But leading up to that, you're on the pitch a lot. I used to do a lot of the video work, the analysis work, because I could do it on the computer, in conjunction with, the analysis. We had somebody part time in the scouts, so you would do all that. You would be compiling that, getting the presentation ready for the manager about the opposition or how we're going to play.
yeah,
So I think there's a lot of roles that you need to do, but I think you need a few skills. If I was going to say what do you need, I think you've got to be good with people.
yeah, definitely.
I think you've got to be empathetic in
Mhm,
terms of everybody. I think you need that coaching knowledge to be able to design, deliver these sessions on the grass. And I think you also, depending on where you're working, I think you need to have a bit of IT
yeah, yeah,
skills as well in
yeah,
terms of whether you're working with a full-time analysis guy or you're doing some of the stuff yourself. I think you need to have a few of these skills.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And then I suppose like just being adaptable, as you mentioned, different
Yeah,
coaches want different things. And I think that trust is a big one. That's probably why you see when a manager goes into a club, a lot of the times they'll bring their assistant with them from where they've worked elsewhere because they've built that trust over time. So that's
definitely.
that's that's an interesting point as well. So then we've got assistant manager. Then we'll jump back to the SFA then in terms of your current role, Dougie. So you're now coach education and development manager. So can you just give us a little bit of what that is basically? What's your roles and what are you kind of responsible for there?
Yeah, we've got within our kind of structure, we've got Greg Patterson who heads up coach education, so we report directly into Greg. So there's myself and Richie Wilson, and now we've got Martin Bucky as well as part of the team. So as coach education managers, myself and Richie kind of deal with the UEFA A license, UEFA B license, the UEFA Elite Youth A license, and the UEFA Youth B license, as well as CPD,
Yeah,
um, and quite a few other areas as well. But that's the kind of main ones that we work on in terms of delivering the courses, the assessments, and CPD for the coaches as well. They need CPD to, once you do get a license of whatever level, say it's a UEFA B, they need to have 15 hours of CPD every 3 years to keep that license
yeah,
valid. So we're involved in that as well. So
yeah,
that's kind of the main duties and responsibilities of me and Rich. Martin, he kind of looks at the UEFA C license and the level one courses that underpin that underneath that. So
yeah.
that's kind of our roles, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So for those that don't know, in terms of the pathways of coaching, Dougie, you mentioned obviously you said the A's, the B's, the youth
Yeah,
license level one. So if I was, I'm not a coach, so if I was wanting to start off my coaching journey, what am I doing, and what is the pathway to get up to that kind of pro license or whatever, the top level at the moment?
yeah. Well, we started at level one, so we during the pandemic we converted a lot of our courses to online. That we still keep them online. So you would start off. We've got an introduction to coaching course, which is online, so that's for anybody, whether
Yeah.
you're going into children's, youth, adult. Once you've done that, you then can pick what pathway you want to go on. So if you're working with primary age kids, you would pick the children's pathway.
Yeah.
So you then do a certificate course, an award course, which takes you up to the UEFA C license for children.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on the youth stroke adult pathway, after your introduction to coaching, you would go up the youth pathway, which looks at 11 aside football. So we do the certificate course, which I think is 12 hours, the award, which is a further 12 hours, and that takes you to the UEFA C license, youth and adult.
Yeah.
If you pass, that's the first pass or fail. UEFA C, so it's like 4 days. Looking at the 11-a-side game, technical training sessions, tactical training sessions. You pass that, then you go up to UEFA B,
Mm-hmm.
which is about 100, I think it's 120-hour duration course, UEFA B.
Yeah.
If you pass that, you then go up to the UEFA A. If you pass that, you would go up to the pro license.
Yeah.
However, at UEFA B, if you're a youth developer, you may choose to go across to the UEFA Youth B
Mm-hmm.
and then go up to the Elite Youth A, which
Yeah.
is for guys that are developing players.
Yeah.
So we've got quite a comprehensive pathway that I think covers, all different sort of ages and stages of players' development, and the coaches can then pick what's suitable for them and whatever context they're kind of working within.
Yeah. Perfect. And then if we just kind of focus on one specifically, then Dougie, say the B license, you mentioned 120 hours. So the first question is, to do a B license, do you have to be employed? Do you have to be working full time in coaching at a club to get them hours, or how does that kind of look?
No, I think we probably have more people apply than we can get on the courses. So we look through the kind of where people are working. What they do have, they don't need to be full time, but they do need to be working with an 11-a-side team,
Yeah.
15 years and above. So that's a must, because they need to be working, with that team as part of the course when they're away from us as tutors, that they're practicing in that environment. So we have people from not just from Scotland, we have them from over the UK, we have them from abroad that fly in.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there is no set criteria apart from you have to have your UEFA C license,
Yeah.
and then we look at potentially your experience in the game where you're working, and go that way. So that's kind of how we. So there's opportunities for everybody that is interested to apply and get on that course.
Yeah, perfect. And then so in terms of, aside from them delivering sessions and obviously what we call that on the grass, how much other stuff is included? Because obviously I was lucky enough to kind of be a little bit included in the
Yeah.
analysis section, which was very interesting to see what's included there and the tasks that were set for the coaches. So analysis is just one part. What kind of other things are as part of the B license, Dougie?
We kind of have the four corner model of the technical, tactical, physical, psychological. So we cover that. So there's two lectures on psychology, in terms of your relations with players, your relations with staff. We also have cover the physical element, especially for there's all the different elements of if you're working with adults, if you're working with youth players, how the physical side of the game, how you should think about that, because anytime you go on a pitch, there's a physical demand on your players. So we look at that in detail.
Yep.
We also cover laws of the game with the referees. And as you say, we cover match analysis. So, about how you start to, look at your own team or maybe your opponents that you're going to play, and how you look at that as, with that coach's eye on it, rather than sometimes when we watch Match of the Day, you're watching it as a fan. When you start looking at the game and analysing it. We the tasks that we give, one of them being, looking at a future opponent, you start to look at it in a different way, in terms of what we discussed earlier on in the conversation. So there's some of the things that we look at, and part of the work that the guys do as well. They have to design sessions. We have a portfolio on Academy Soccer Coach that they design sessions. They can put their match analysis in. We also have the role of the part-time manager. We've had various different people come in to do presentations on that, because we feel that might be the first management job that some of the candidates may get as a part-time role, and give them the real insights to what that job entails, because it's sometimes not quite it's not quite what you would expect when you go into the senior game. It's different, but it just gives the guys an insight as to what to potentially expect in their first job, some of the challenges, how we go about it, your first meeting with the players, what you're going to say, what you're going to talk about. You get that first chance. So no, it covers quite it's not just about on the grass, although the kind of tactical part of it is one of the main parts of the course, is showing that competency of being able to coach the 11-a-side game, with different formations, different themes. So it's quite a comprehensive course.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, just on that point there you made in terms of the first time having a team talk and the first time, like just thinking back, obviously the same goes for any role really, but I remember when I first was an analyst back in the day, and the first time you go into the changing room at half time and stuff, the first time you go in the changing room after the game, after you've been beaten and stuff, like there's all of that kind of thing to think about, and it's all those different experiences are valuable in, I suppose, learning, becoming a better
100%. Yeah.
Perfect. So while you're in your current role, then Dougie, you're also doing some coaching for the under-19s, is that right? The assistant coach for the under-19s, which I'm sure that's a great role to have. So you touched upon earlier as well in terms of the balance of winning and obviously development of these players. So these players are still young, but they're at that stage where I'm sure they're probably close to being, if they're good enough to be in the first national squad. So just what does the balance look like in terms of at the under-19 levels for the kind of development and winning? What's that? Is it the split?
I think now with the national team, it's 100% about trying to qualify for tournaments. So you're trying to win games. So we have a large scouting network. Players first come in at 16, 17, so we know a bit about them from previous age groups. But when we come in, we kind of sometimes have a camp to prepare. The last camp we were on was a new group of players, so we had 22 players in. We played 2 different teams with a view to just getting a look at them to think who we'll take to the next camp, which we're starting to prepare for qualification, which is in November. So it's all geared towards qualifying for the latter stages of the European tournaments. So probably club football is a wee bit different in terms of you're looking at the bigger picture of trying to get that gem to come through your first team. We're solely about you're trying to educate. You've only got the players for a small amount of time. They're the club's players. They get their education at the clubs. We're trying to knit them together and try and qualify and win games of football. So that's probably the objective. Some of the challenges that come in are you don't always get all the players that you would have at that age group. Some of them, are fast tracked to the 21s, which is great, because our objective is to try and produce players for the national team. So that pathway, if somebody's done really, really well, they'll go in, they'll get fast tracked to the 21s, and then sometimes they're taken for the 21s straight into the national team, like Billy Gilmore, Nathan Patterson, to name a couple of the recent ones. So it's not just about probably qualifying for tournaments. That's not the be all and end all. We would sacrifice, that player to develop. We feel that they'll develop quicker by going up to the 21s rather than maybe qualifying for a tournament. So that you've got to balance all that up, I think. So you don't always. I don't think Scott Gemmell at 21s. He'll never have his strongest 21s, because some of these guys will get promoted to the first team. The 18, and we're probably the same at 17. Some other guys will go to the 21. So but it gives, when somebody's promoted to that 21s, it gives somebody else an opportunity to shine.
Definitely. So I'm sure that obviously role gives you a chance to do a bit of traveling as well, Dougie. So in terms of away games, I mean, Where any nice places you've been with the squad so far?
We've been in loads of different countries: Hungary, Slovenia, Slovakia. So you get to see different places, which has been fantastic. We were down at Wales the last camp, so everything's a bit different. Cultures are different, and for me, it's been a huge learning curve in terms of international football and how you prepare teams. When you've got 3 games in 10 days or less than that, sometimes 3 days, sometimes 3 games in 7 days. That recovery, you don't spend a lot of time training the recoveries, and that's where it's probably so important in terms of the IT skills, where you're doing a lot of meetings, you're doing a lot of your work through the analysis of training, or a lot of that. A lot of the time is spent in meetings in terms of looking at the opponents, looking at ourselves, rather than being on the grass, because you need to have these players fresh for these games. So it's been very interesting in terms of how you prepare players for international football.
Yeah, perfect. So, I mean, while we're on the topic of the national team and winning games, obviously we'll speak about the first senior team. Obviously, Scotland had a good start to the Euro qualification with that victory over Spain, which is a amazing result. So it kind of gives you a good stepping stone now to kind of push on and get the qualification. Obviously, I'm sure it's kind of seen as a bonus 3 points almost against a team like Spain. So it puts you in a brilliant position. I mean, what's your thoughts on the qualification, Dougie?
No, I think it's a fantastic start. Against Cyprus and Spain to get 6 points. But we've grown. Steve Clarke, the first team manager, has done a fantastic job. We've got I think there's a real club feel. It's been quite a settled squad for a number of years. We're fortunate that a lot of the players are playing in the English Premier League. Playing in Europe, they're playing at the top level, which I think has helped as well. And adding the guys that we've got from the Scottish game as well. So we've got a good mixture, and I think there's a confidence, and a belief that hasn't been there for a while. And it's a tough group. It's only 2 games in, but we've given ourselves a real good start and a good opportunity to try and qualify. Which we went through a barren spell of no qualifying for major tournaments for 20 odd years. So this is a good group of players. We had a really good manager, a good backroom staff, and doing fantastic. And it gives us at the association such a boost. It gives the country such a boost. Handing's absolutely rocking these days. He's struggling to get tickets. It's a full house, which it used to be back in the day, and it's fantastic to see for us as a nation, but especially when we're working in the game within Scotland. It just gives us everything a boost. It's hard to explain, but even our Coach Ed programme, it gives us a real pride and boost when our first team's doing so well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, as well as when these tournaments do come around, you want to be involved in them, don't you? You want to be
100%. Yeah,
I can definitely see how that makes a big difference. So if we just kind of go more now, then Doug, if I ask you what kind of the advice route a little bit. So firstly, what would you say? What's your opinion? What makes a good coach? We've touched upon a few things already, but in terms of what skills would you say are important for it to be a successful coach?
I think you just got to be the best you can be. I think you've got to be organised. I think you've got to plan and prepare. I think that's massive in terms of, you've got to think about what you want. I think you work your way backwards. What do you want to achieve from a session?
Yeah.
Then how are you going to do it? How are you going to structure that session? I think you've got to communicate. You've got to be able to communicate. I think you've got to give your players clarity. There's no grey areas about how you want them to function, whether it's in possession or out of possession. And I think you've got to be passionate. And without that energy and passion, because they will feed off you. If you do not show that, which sometimes we see on the coaching courses, you've got to, they feed off you. So you've got to have that. And I think there's no shortcuts to success for me to be a good coach. I've got a good slide for Arsene Wenger that was showing the B licence about some people. They want to have that qualification, they want to have that job, but they don't want to put the hours in to get that experience. And you learn by it's you. I always think it's you versus yourself. When you analyse your session, was it a good session? Could it be better? It can always be better. You're always striving to make it better. And if you don't do that, I think you plateau. So I think you're always trying to push yourself in terms of how you can make it better, what worked for you, what didn't. Be brave. You try things. If they don't work, you don't stick to the same thing. Be curious. Watch other people. Watch other coaches. Watch top level coaches. But don't try and be one of them. Be yourself.
Yeah.
I think as well. Do not try to be somebody you're not. I think you see people trying to do that, and it doesn't work. You are what you are,
Yeah.
and if you're quiet, try and come out your shell. If you're too excitable, try and calm down. But be yourself. But
Yeah.
passion is a massive thing for me, and you need knowledge of the game.
Yeah.
You need to have that knowledge of the game, and try and educate yourself and make yourself the best you can be.
Yeah.
So that's some of the things for me.
No, that's brilliant. That's a great answer. So you touched upon kind of continual learn, like CPD, and kind of not becoming kind of stale almost and coasting along, which can be said for any role really, not just
Yeah,
a coach. Obviously, once you've got that job, it's easy to kind of think, well, I've kind of made it now. I've got that coaching role that I wanted, or I've got that analysis role that I wanted. But if you want to kick on and you want to have a successful career, you have got to continue to learn and check out what's new in the industry, and kind of learn from others. As you mentioned, maybe you can learn from others that are that step above you. They're maybe a couple of years ahead of you in your development. You can kind of lean on them and learn. So one thing there that you did say is kind of watching others coach, Dougie, and I just want to go back to one of your tweets actually, which is I think is your pin tweet on your profile, in terms of you had the pleasure to kind of go over to Roma and kind of see Mourinho and meet Mourinho, see his trainings. Can you just talk us a little bit about that and what impact that had on you, Dougie?
yeah. I've been fortunate. When I was doing my license, I think it was way back about 2005. I wrote to Jose Mourinho, who was one of the top guys at the time,
Mm.
and asked him if I could come in and view his session. And I
Yeah.
perfectly honest, thinking I'll never hear back or whatever. But if you don't try, you don't get. So Josie had done his B license with the Scottish FA when he was at Barcelona. So
Mm.
I think I was maybe lucky, but he allowed me to come down because his secretary says when I phoned her to arrange it, you're so lucky. The amount of letters we get, and Josie just says no. So
Yeah.
anyway, that was the start of it. Went in, met him. He was brand new to me. I watched his session, and it was a Friday actually because that was the only time we could arrange it. And the first thing he said was, "You need to come down again. Friday's just we've got a game tomorrow. You're not going to see the full session,
Yeah.
so come down again." So I did. Kept myself to myself. Long story short, kept in touch with him, and as part of my pro license, I had to do a club visit. So
Mm.
I went out to Roma to visit him again, and just watching them on the pitch is fantastic. The level of detail, the preparation, how meticulous everything is, the standards, and the passion he's still got. That he had all these years ago. That you may argue he lost a wee bit at Man United, but I think he's got it back at Roma. I think he's found a perfect mix again at Roma. But absolutely fascinating to see. Probably the best thing that I've seen in terms of learning. I watched them that time. That I got down to Chelsea for a full week,
Yeah.
and he was playing against Fulham at the weekend, and he played 4-3-3 just about all that season, and he went to a 4-4-2 diamond for that game. So I watched them build up during the week to this 4-2 diamond with Drogba and can't remember who the other striker. We brought somebody in. They brought another striker in, and it was fascinating to watch the level of detail. But very similar to some of the practices we do on the licenses. Nothing that you've never ever seen before, but the level of detail and the standard of the players was incredible. So I've learned a lot from watch. I always try to watch other coaches. You're always learning. You're learning for the courses. You watch candidates do something you've not seen before on the courses. But I think you should always try and improve yourself, and sometimes that's by watching other people.
Yeah.
And for me, I was fortunate to be able to watch one of the best in the world, which I'll always be grateful for. And it's easy for him to say no because he's a busy man, but he gave up time. I had a good sat down with him. I was there for a couple of days, sat and had a bit of food with him and just discussed football. And it's bizarre at times. You're thinking, what am I doing here? But that's been brilliant. It's been a real a real great, a great thing in my life to be able to have
Yeah.
witnessed that, and forever grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, perfect. And an interesting thing you said there, Dougie, actually was obviously you can learn from the people like Jose Mourinho, the people that are really at the top. But then you said you still learn from potentially someone could come on a course and do something that you've not seen before, and you could learn from that. So I think that is important. Like don't think that you're kind of further in your journey than this person, so they've got nothing to teach you or you can't learn from them. You can only learn from both. That's not the case. So it's just
Yeah,
being open and listening to ideas from everyone, really. So that's really interesting. So okay, so I've gone through a majority of my questions here, Dougie. So what I do kind of ask everyone that kind of joins me on this channel is, and you may not be a reader or anything, but do you have any book recommendations, any podcasts? And it doesn't necessarily have to be sport, anything at all that you feel is useful.
I think the High Performance podcast is excellent. One of our guys is on it, Steve Salas, who delivers the psychology module for the B and the A license. So,
yeah,
along with various other guys at the top of their profession, I think it's a good listen. I've listened to that. It's weird. I used to read loads of books. I've just given the kind of time that's involved in this job. I'm guilty of not reading as much as I should.
yeah,
One that I did read that I found fascinating was Pep Lingard's, the Liverpool assistant manager. I read his book. I think for anybody into coaching, it's a kind of year. And that season of Liverpool is very, very interesting. He's very open. I
yeah.
think it's a good read. So that's one that I'm currently reading just now. So, but definitely, I think there's a lot of good stuff out there. But the High Performance podcast, I would have a listen to that,
Yeah.
definitely.
Perfect. It's interesting. I don't know when this will come out on, because the last one I recorded the other day said the same book as well, said the Pep Linders book. They
Is
were
that
at
right?
the time, so I
Yeah,
don't know who will
yeah,
come out first, but yeah, two recommendations for
yeah.
that one in a couple of days. So that's
That's
perfect.
a good read. It's a good read.
Perfect. Well, I'll link that below for anyone interested to see it. So one final thing, Dougie, I just want to do a quick fire round here and basically a little bit different. So it's nothing to do with coaching really. Hence the SFA, the Scotland. It's got a bit of a Scottish theme to it. So I'm going to give you either or, and you've just got to give me a quick
Right.
answer in terms of what you prefer. So okay, so we'll start off with Glasgow or Edinburgh.
Edinburgh.
Kenny Dalglish or Graham Souness.
Oh, I'm going to go Graham Souness because as a midfielder, and he was my favourite. Although Dalglish is brilliant, so
Yeah, no
I'm going
problem.
to go Graham Souness.
We've got Frankie Boyle or Kevin Bridges.
Kevin Bridges.
Bridges, shortbread or haggis.
Haggis.
Lewis Capaldi or Calvin Harris.
Calvin Harris.
And then Pepsi or Iron Brew.
Iron Brew.
Iron Brew, you had to say that. You had to say that one. Nice one. Perfect, Dougie. That's brilliant. So, like I said, I've gone through everything. I really enjoyed that. Is anything else you want to add, Dougie? Anything you want to kind of add before we wrap it up?
Just on that, I know a lot of your listeners are kind of into the analysis side. Just a wee bit about my 19s experience. We've got the analysis guy is so important to our team, and the last guy that we had is a guy Ross Mitchell, who works at Celtic, who comes along,
Yeah.
and Ross has done his B license,
Yeah.
and I think that's probably helped him see things in the game as well and understand that kind of coaching side.
Yeah.
I definitely would recommend, to further your education if you're into analysis, that doing a coaching course sometimes helps, because what I found with Ross is he can see things that we see. So he's picking out moments, he's cutting them without us having to look for them, and that's such a huge advantage in terms of time, and especially in these international camps. But just in terms of his knowledge of the game, I would advise we get quite a few analysis guys come on the course. You're maybe not going to be the best coach you'll ever be, but it probably helps you understand the game a bit more, I would say.
Definitely, and I suppose it helps for the trust as well between the relationship
Yeah,
between the analyst, the coach, or the manager. If they've got that knowledge, then more that trust will be bigger.
I definitely think, speaking to some of the colleagues that have been managers at a high level, and I definitely think it helps when that analysis person has got a knowledge of the game, and maybe, I don't know how, if you're applying for a job, I would think it would be a plus to have, a coaching qualification on your CV as well. I think I'm thinking my own self if I was looking at it, and that's not to decry anybody that hasn't got one. But I would think, you know, going back to trying to be the best you can be and further your education within any side of the game, then I think my advice would be to think about it in terms of potential going on a course.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the more analyst jobs now, when you read the description, the more now, probably going back, so, you know, several years, they didn't even mention that, but now they are saying, you know, either it's essential or it's desirable to have the qualification, and it's obviously understandable why that would be. So yeah, definitely any analyst watching, you know, you can't do any harm in getting those qualifications just to bolster your kind of your own education, your own skills. So that's a great point to finish on. So Dougie, thanks very much for your time. I really appreciate that. You enjoy the rest of your day, and I'm sure we shall catch up soon.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Thank you.
Cheers, Dougie.